A reminder you can help support the channel by joining the AMTV Patreon. You can also follow us and keep up to date on Twitter at AmTV, or if you like, you can join us here at AMTV by becoming a staff member via the YouTube membership programme. Hello, and welcome to the Ident Review Extra, the spin-off show that takes a look at one individual ident each episode and gives it the review it deserves. And this time around, we're embarking on a journey through the ITV Network and all the different regional stations that comprised it. And this time, we conclude our marathon by looking at my regional provider, Yorkshire Television. As one of the newcomers born from the 1968 franchise round, Yorkshire Television was created to serve the newly created franchise region of, well, Yorkshire. With Granada now serving the North West, and ABC giving up its weekend franchise to help form Thames with rediffusion, Yorkshire Television had a massive audience to greet it, but one it would have to make a positive impression upon. It's fair to say that as the years went by, it was able to do so in spectacular fashion, becoming one of the most successful and influential franchise holders across the entire ITV network. So with that, let's delve into their idents over the years, and see if Yorkshire Television's presentation had something to do with the company's success.
Comedy duo Hale and Pace return in 15 minutes. Now on YTV, it's news time. Now on YTV, we've a 5-minute feline frame-up in cartoon time.
Now on Yorkshire, we journey to Shortland Street.
Come home to Channel 3, Yorkshire Television.
Tonight on the South Bank Show, a profile of Yoko Ono at 11:15.
On Wednesday at 9, a new series aims to find the perfect partner for Mr. Right. But back to tonight, and over on ITV2, another chance to see the stars in Celebrity Fit Club. Here on ITV1, Faye Ripley and Helen McCrory, dead gorgeous.
Talk about finding your look and sticking with it. Right from its very early days in the late 60s, Yorkshire Television was symbolised by the incorporation of the chevron, a symbol that resembled the letter Y and would go on to become one of the most recognisable symbols of British television. The slit scan technique used is also quite nice for the time, and of course, who can forget the iconic musical jingle? It's part of a classic Yorkshire folk song known as On Ilkley Moor Batat, I'd recommend giving it a listen, particularly this version from 2013, especially if you want to hear Brian Blessed rapping.
Where's the been since I saw thee last? Up in Ilkley with that you have.
Anyhow, back to YTV, the slit scan sequence was updated to be in colour, just 1 year into the company's life in 1969, but as the 70s rolled in, the original ident was dropped to just a caption card, which had the company name and Chevron logo, but with the words Colour Production stationed beneath. The UK was progressively transitioning to obtaining colour TV sets throughout the 70s, so it makes sense that they would retain the moniker. By 1982, the need to promote the colour nature of Yorkshire's programming was dropped from the main ident, but soon after, some variations would appear that would really help settle the franchise firmly in the 1980s. The first shows several small chevrons that make up a gigantic one, with a counter rising to 6 million, the approximate audience reach that YTV had in the region. This concept would be pushed one step further over the next few years, with computer technology starting to be used to display the Yorkshire region and continuing the serving 6 million tagline. CG idents were starting to creep in during the mid-1980s across all channels and companies, but I think Yorkshire's use of it is really nice. Showcasing your region and boasting about serving everyone with it is certainly a confident approach, but one that the Yorkshire branding really suits. However, it would be in 1987 that arguably the defining CG ident for YTV would first appear. Dubbed Liquid Gold, we see the familiar chevron, now rendered in full 3D, rising from a pool of liquid gold, rotating before settling in the centre of the screen, the now iconic jingle blaring out in an orchestral rendition. This honestly feels like a great culmination of everything that Yorkshire had tried in the past. The day one staples of the chevron and music are present, whilst also embracing new techniques and technology. We've still got a few idents to cover, but for me, the 1987 sequence will always be my absolute favourite of the Yorkshire Television bunch. A rather shiny and elegant variant appears in 1989, helping to celebrate YTV's 21st birthday, but compared to what came before in 1987, I really wish they had pulled out all the stops for the special occasion. Not that viewers would see it for long, as later in 1989, ITV would introduce its first generic look, giving franchise holders the option to use this sequence with their own identities incorporated into it. Yorkshire would oblige, but would attempt several revisions of the generic ident. The first sees part of the chevron form part of the V in ITV, as all franchise logos did, but soon after, the entire chevron would be granted the spot. Clearly the iconography was too recognisable to relegate to just a section. Later on, sometimes the chevron would be seen as the main focus, rather than the corporate ITV logo. These different variations would be seen on Yorkshire viewer screens up until late 1994. Breaking away from the standard ITV look, Yorkshire would return to creating its own dedicated ident, one that certainly gets a mixed response. For starters, the familiar Ilkley Moor tune has been done away with, now replaced with a smooth jingle, one that lacks any sort of memorability or impact compared with what came before. I don't know why they chose to ditch the tune that had served them for over 25 years, and if you wanted to make things new, why keep the chevron? It's great to still see it, as well as the images of the region shown in the background, but honestly, it just feels so lacking compared to what was being shown in the mid to late 80s. Thankfully, these bores wouldn't last for long, as in 1996, YTV viewers would see some new sequences adorn their screens. The Channel 3 branding was seen across Yorkshire as well as Tyne Tees, their neighbouring franchise holder. Whilst Tyne Tees went whole hog on the Channel 3 look, Yorkshire Television would be sure to keep its own image and presence front and centre. In this variant, we see the giant gold 3, which does look very impressive, all rendered in 3D, against the blue background, but it quickly gives way to the ever-familiar chevron, which settles in place as we hear the triumphant return of On Ilkley Moor Batat. This for me is the perfect ident to represent YTV in the 1990s. It refines the computer-generated technology of the last decade, whilst updating the day one elements for the modern day. For me, the Channel 3 branding can work, but when it's played out like this, playing second field to the regional franchise holder. Behind the 1987 Liquid Gold sequence, I would say this is a close second to being my favourite YTV ident. After 3 years, Yorkshire would once again adopt a generic look set out by ITV, this time based around the theme of Hearts. The Hearts films are hit or miss in terms of how well they work, but it's nice to see that despite the generic look, the Yorkshire name and chevron symbol take centre stage in the final image, with the ITV corporate branding playing more of a secondary role. Whilst the Hearts were used for network programming, Yorkshire would devise its own variation for any local shows. This sees the spinning background Hearts replaced with chevrons, the sequence adopting a more purple tone compared to the Hearts blue. Furthermore, a series of images from the region sits alongside the chevron symbol. In a way, this feels like a more refined and simplified version of the 1994 ident, and this newer revision, whilst not perfect, works a lot better in my view. This local variant, together with the heart sequences, would be utilised by Yorkshire up until late 2002. It would be at this time that all regions would be represented by the ITV1 branding, with franchise company names only appearing before local programming, and even then taking secondary place to the ITV name. By the mid-2000s, most traces of Yorkshire's identity on air had been removed, thus ending over 45 years of serving God's own country. Yorkshire Television has gone on to become one of the most recognisable and most remembered names in the ITV network, alongside the capital providers like Thames and LWT, and even neighbouring franchises like Granada and Tyne Tees. There are millions who have the fondest memories for YTV, their programmes, and their idents. From relatively simple beginnings, continuing into the early days of colour, to developing a more advanced presentation style, utilising computer technology, while staying true to what made their look so iconic and impactful in the first place. And whilst regional idents seemingly are a thing of the past for ITV, viewers in Yorkshire can be assured that their screens would be beaming with the gold sheen of the chevron and the blaring tune of Ilkley Moor, to help settle them in for a quality run of programmes. And of course, with it being my region, it seemed the obvious and fitting choice as the conclusion of our marathon through the ITV network. So here's to Yorkshire Television, the evolution of its idents, and the many happy memories that it gave to so many millions of viewers. And so that brings us to the end of another episode of the Ident Review Extra. If you enjoyed this look back at Yorkshire, then please leave a like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel for lots more ident related content. I've been Adam Martyn from AMTV, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. A special thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special shout out to Macra, an AMTV staff member. Until the next broadcast, we wish you all a good night.